Okay. And just so the record is clear, we're in docket 6180 WR 101, the application of the Village of Walworth for authority to adjust water rates. This is Mike Newmark, Administrative Law Judge for the PSC. With me, Madison's Alex Hanna and Kathleen Bootsloff of Commission staff. We're connected by telephone to the meeting room in the Walworth Municipal Building. So we explained before we got online here that we're creating the record today, so we'll first look at the utilities filings. I believe we have two. Okay, we have the data requests. I don't think I saw those. Okay. So we have two filings from the utility. Let's see, I just want to confer with Mr. Hanna. So the PFP, is that a utility filing?
Yeah, they filed that.
And the two data requests?
Yep, and the two data requests,
okay.
The application, and then 2 or 3 customer notices.
Right, okay. All right, great. So we really have customer notice. There's 3 documents that will make up the notice. There's the application, and there's 3 other exhibits filed by the utility related to the PFP charge, and 2 data request responses. So we'll need someone from the utility, or we can split this up between representatives of the utility who can verify those documents under oath. So if we did the customer notice first and the application, then take the other exhibits, who can verify first off the customer notice?
I can.
Okay, can you get a little closer to the phone, please?
Okay.
Already? Okay, great. So let me swear you in. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and give me your name, please.
Lisa Rogers.
Okay. All right. So, which documents can you verify? There's 3 documents that make up the notice. Can you verify those, and any others that you can do?
I can verify the notices. The customer notice that was published in the paper.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one that was mailed out to customers on, I believe, the 5th of March. And then the other was posted in 3 different places here in the village: the village hall, the library, and the post office.
Okay, good. Did I swear you in? I didn't swear.
You did.
I did?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. So, so with all those notice documents, are they complete and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay, great. And any other documents from the utility you can verify, or should we turn to somebody else?
Which?
Well, there's the application that was filed at the beginning of the case, and there's 3, basically they're responses to the commission. One was related to the PFP charge. One is and 2 others are data request responses. They're all filed. One was filed in November, one was in October, and one was in January.
I believe I filed all of those. So.
Okay, you did. Okay. All right. So let me ask you: in the application, you can verify that document?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And is it complete and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay. The PFP method charge document, can you verify that?
I'm sorry. The method.
Can I?
Yeah. It's hang on just a second.
Yeah, so that document was filed on November 16th. It was for your change in the way you recover your direct public fire protection charges.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, they had the resolution and then a letter on that.
I can verify that.
Okay. So is it complete and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay. And the data request, there's 2 responses. What are those? What do those look like?
So,
So the second one was January 5th,
Right.
and the first one I believe, was October 30th.
Yep,
Those
that's
that we
right.
have.
They were, I can verify those. The one from January 5th was prepared by representatives of Baker Tilly.
Okay.
And the other one, I believe I prepared that response.
Okay. So are they complete and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay, great. So do you have any other comments you'd like to make? Anything else you'd like to add? I'm sorry?
Not at the moment.
No? Okay, good. All right, anyone else wish? Oh, go ahead. Were you saying something else? Right, is there anyone else wish to speak on behalf of the utility? No? No one else for the utility? Okay. All right, so we'll turn to commission staff. We'll do the revenue requirement first. So Ms. Busloff, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, and you're familiar with the revenue requirement exhibit?
Yes, I am.
Is it complete and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, it is.
Okay, any comments?
One thing I would like to point out is that this case was prepared as a two-step increase,
Okay.
which we do a few times each year when there's a construction project or large new expense that's going to be ongoing that did not yet start. And that was the situation in this rate case. So the first step is about a 3% rate increase and would be taking effect if it's approved after the order goes out and the utility puts the rates into effect. And then if it's approved, the second step would take effect when a new employee is hired, and we are notified at the commission that the new employee has been hired. And that would take the increase up to a 17% increase, so approximately an additional 14%.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, so we can now have Mr. Hanna verify the cost of service study and rate design from commission staff. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm so the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And you can verify that document?
Yes, I can.
Is it complete and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Any comments?
No comments at this time.
Okay, good. All right, so we can now turn to members of the public who are in attendance, and we'll take public comment. We do, just so you know, we do have 4 comments currently filed online, and they'll be made part of the record, but we can now take public comments. So hopefully the public was given the appearance slips to fill out if they wish to speak, and if I can ask Ms. Rogers just to read out those names one at a time, and we'll just take the people, as you call them. Just have them get close to the phone, and we'll do the same thing. I'll swear them in, get their name, but then they can give their opinion on the case. So, do we have people who wish to speak?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Let's just start with our first.
My name is Kathleen Layton.
Okay, ma'am. Please spell your name for me, please.
Layton. First name Kathleen, Kathleen.
So I'm gonna swear you in, then you can go ahead with your comments. So just so you know, these are your opinion on the case. The commission, like I said, is analyzing the application, and because I didn't mention that we have the power to accept, deny, or modify the proposal. So that's and basically Mr. Knudsen will get a copy of this recording and be able to hear all the comments people are making today. So let me swear you in first, and then you can go ahead with your comments. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm, tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, I had a question. There was an article in the Lake Geneva newspaper saying that an audit had been done as part of your review process, and the audit said that for many past years, certain officials were improperly diverting the water payments for other non-water village operating expenses, and I was wondering if that audit had been completed.
Okay, is there any other questions you have? We can take those all at the same time. So I just wondered if you had something else, or is that your...
The only other thing I was curious as to why they want to revise the billing for the fire department instead of having it on the tax bill. It would be included onto the water bill. And I was just curious as to why that change was being requested.
Okay, great. So I don't know, is someone from the utility able to answer those questions for us?
I could answer the question about the fire utility charge.
Okay.
The fire protection.
Okay, and who's this?
This is Tom Connolly,
Okay.
village president.
Can you get a little closer to the speaker, please?
You bet. Again, Tom Connolly, village president.
Okay, can you just spell your name? Your last name.
Yeah. Connolly, Connelly.
All right, great. So I'll swear
First
you in.
name,
Tom, okay, great. So please raise your right hand, and do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Yeah, if you can respond to those, and then I'll give commission staff a chance, too, if they want to add something.
So with regards to the fire protection fee, the way that the budget historically was structured, we had these anticipated large payments from both the sewer and the water utility built into the budget as refunds. Through this process, we found those to be essentially misappropriations of funds. So to remove those from the budget, the only way that the board saw a path forward was to use the opportunity that the state legislature has offered small municipalities some relief during a time when we're not allowed to raise the levy. So the $220,000 that was budgeted each year out of the utility, we're replacing the majority of that with this fire protection fee moving over to the ratepayer. So that's the answer to that question. And the first question, with regards to, I think I kind of answered both. There was budgeted a refund when, in fact, a refund probably shouldn't have been expected of the size that it was being put into the budget. And in some years, in fact, there wasn't a refund available. So the village is trying to correct that by completely taking that expected payment from the utility on both the sewer and the water side out of the budget. So I think I hope that answers that.
Okay.
That answer your question?
I think so, yeah.
So I think Ms. Blutzloff had something to add to that. So go ahead.
Yes, I guess I've maybe describe it in a little bit different way. Sometimes when you hear it two different ways, it makes a little more sense. So a water utility needs a certain amount of revenue to operate every year, and that's called the revenue requirement. And they collect quite a bit of revenue from their general customers through meter charges and volume charges who use the water. But the system's also designed to fight fires, so there's the larger water tower, perhaps some larger wells, larger water mains that can provide that fire flow when there's large fires. So the other portion of the revenue the water utility needs every year is collected as a charge to support that fire protection service. And historically, many utilities, the majority of them, have collected that as one lump sum from their municipal entity, their city or village or town. And in turn, that came from property taxes. Now, over the last 20 years, there have been choices that the water utility could be directed to collect part or all of it as a direct charge on the customer bills, and many water utilities in the state have chosen that along with their city or village or town. So the amount of revenue that the utility needs for the year is not changing, it's just how they're collecting it. So instead of collecting a lump sum from the village, they are collecting it in smaller amounts on all the water bills. So that's fire protection.
I just wanted to make sure that the method of collecting that charge is up to the municipality. The commission doesn't really have a choice.
Right, that's correct. By statute, the municipality gets to decide how that charge is collected. The second one, when you mentioned the audit, that would really be what we do as part of reviewing the rate case. The auditors at the commission, including myself, review the application. We review the annual reports that are on our website and the utilities file every year, and we also send out some data requests as part of the case and get responses to those data requests. And what we discovered, just to elaborate a little bit more, is that every year the village had requested a payment from the water and sewer utilities, kind of a dividend or refund to them. And state statute in Wisconsin does allow that if a utility has surplus funds left at the end of the year, they can pay some of that into the general fund. But it says that's allowed only if they have surplus funds. So as we go back over the past approximately 15 years, and this request was made of the utilities every year, some years they had enough to make this transfer and payments over to the general fund, and other years they did not have enough surplus funds available to make this transfer. So when we looked into this particular issue and discussed the statute with the local officials at the water utility and informed them that in those particular years when there was not a surplus available, they did not have to pay this transfer. So that is how this receivable you read about in the paper developed over the last 15 years or so. It was amounts year by year that the utilities did not have a surplus. So by writing this off or erasing this receivable, it brings the utility more into compliance with what the statute's intended.
Okay. Great, thank you very much. All right, so Ms. Lagan, does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you very much.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for making those that comment and getting people up to speed on this. So we can take the next member of the public.
Oh, I'm very short. Kathleen David Rasmussen, 204 Benito Street, Walworth, Wisconsin. Thank you for your presentation. Oops, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. Well, actually, don't go ahead. Let me get your last name, please. Let me spell that for you.
Rasmussen, Rasmussen.
Okay, great. Let me swear you in. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, so help me God.
All right. Well, please give your comment.
Okay, I was going to say, Kathleen, thank you for the presentation. I think you very fairly and honestly stated what accurately happened. Is it also correct, though, that in that $1.5 million, that includes money from the sewer, and probably the refund from the sewer really wouldn't have to be written off if we could separate the two? In other words, the water and sewer refunds were kind of mixed together in the $1.5 million. Isn't that correct, too? It's my understanding.
Based on the information I have and the analysis that I did, it is a little bit unclear in some of the years exactly how much surplus they had at the end of the year. Not due to anything unusual or hidden. There's just some differences in PSC regulatory accounting and how a sewer department reports some of the expenses they incur, such as investment in a joint treatment plant. So given that, it was somewhat difficult to determine the exact amount of surplus that sewer would have or the payment that they would record at the end of the year. And I think Baker Tilly indicated that too in their schedule, that there was some difficulty in determining some exact numbers. So this was the best information we had available and the best recommendation we could make at the time.
Okay.
Thank you. And I recognize that our sewer, I think, is even a worse rate of return or lower rate of return right now than water. But there's no reason sewer
which is deregulated, couldn't continue to budget a payback if they wished, provided all operating expenses were first paid, correct?
Well, that's basically what the statute that pertains to water utilities say, that they need to meet all their annual obligations, their operating costs, their depreciation, and any capital assets they need to take care of. And it's quite clear that that applies to regulated water utilities. The question wasn't fully addressed as far as an unregulated sewer department, how much they would need to exactly follow that statute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, we can't give you advice about how to operate and the finances of the unregulated sewer utility. But I think what Ms. Bootslov is saying is that the restrictions on those payments are applicable to the water utility according to the statute. So, anything else?
I appreciate that. It would be good policy to follow the same in running the sewer as well anyway, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah, that's up to you
yeah,
guys.
thank
Yeah,
you.
it does make sense.
Nothing else. Thank you very much.
Great. I just wanted to add, Ms. Bootslov, you did mention the Baker-Tilly schedule. Is that one of the data request responses?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's the second one in January.
Okay, good. So that's in the record. All right. And do we have any other members of the public that wish to speak?
I wonder if you can hear me from where I'm sitting.
It's okay. We may have to. Let's see. I think it'll be all right. Let me get your name.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Thank you.
Good.
You were speaking too rapidly for me, but now I'll probably be able to hear you better.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. I'll need your name, please.
Dolores Polfalt.
And
The
spell
last
that.
name is spelled P-O-P, as in soda pop, H-A-L.
Great. Okay. Let me swear you in. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Please give us your comments.
Since the last rate increase request in 2006, and now comparing the information provided to the public through a newspaper item, I noticed there's a similarity between the request for the 2006 and the 2017 rate increase. I'm assuming we are calling this a 2017 rate increase or 2018.
I'll let staff clarify that.
Yes, it is based on a 2017 test year, so those are the estimates we reviewed. Ideally, we try and get those cases done by the end of 2017, but occasionally they roll into early 2018.
Okay.
Okay, I'm comparing the two requests. Each of those requests indicate the need for an additional employee. So the last rate increase in 2006 was 11 years ago. So I'm wondering why an employee for the sewer utility was not hired at that time, or whether there was one. I'm not sure. Perhaps the employees could testify to that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I don't see anything on record that another employee was hired in 2006. The other similarity is that the water tower needed repainting in 2006, which I believe was done. And again, we're talking about water tower repainting in another 5 years, according to the newspaper items. So, and then also the maintenance costs, that occurs in operational costs on a yearly basis. I guess inflationary rate increases. However, we've had rate increases every year since 2012, 13, the last 5 years, and that's reported in one of your documents here. So I agree, those rate increases did occur, but I believe they were simplified rate increases.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering how often these rate increases are going to keep occurring. And this one is a huge one because of the illegal transfer of funds from the water utility to the village general fund. When you calculate the 12 years, that's $1,200,000. And from my standpoint, that amount of money would have covered possibly another employee. It would have set aside some funds for water tower painting. It would have also assisted in rehab of the water well and a number of other items. So to me, that's a huge loss. And this is the second time around we're considering waiving over $1 million. In the sewer utility deregulation process in 1998, the board had to waive $1,522,000 in debt at that time. This is a repeated item coming up. How do we prevent this from continuing? And so it's a huge concern because the ratepayers are continuing to pick up the tab for this. Now, if anybody has any solutions to prevent it from happening, and also how do you deal with the major errors that have occurred through this process? I just don't think the ratepayers should be continually asked to cover all these minuses that are occurring because of transferring money that wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And I would like to know which statute number is listed in the statutes that covers this payment to the municipality at will like this. Is there a cap on it? And if not, I also want to know how long it has been in the statutes. Mm-hmm. Do you think you could answer that for me?
Okay. Let me take a shot at explaining the payment that you call the illegal payment, and I think I'll have Ms. Butzloff correct me if I get it totally wrong, and I understand why people are going to be confused by this, especially if it was reported as an illegal payment. The way I understand this is that the village billed the utility for these amounts, but the utility was not able to pay them. And what we're doing in this case is we're taking those charges off the books of the utility because the utility should not and will not be paying those charges. So although on the records of the accounts of the utility, it looked like it owed this money that it never paid. It was never supposed to pay them, and it won't pay them. So the village was asking the utility to pay, and over the years, the utility was not able to pay. So there was really no transfer of funds in terms of the excess amounts that is not allowed by statute. The statute number itself, I think Ms. Butzloff is looking for it at the moment. It may take a few minutes to find it, and I apologize. I should probably have a better handle on finding those things.
I believe it's 66.0811, but I am confirming that right now.
Okay, so it's definitely Chapter 66. That's the municipal law chapter, and 0811 does seem like we're in the correct location there, but we'll verify that. So I'm wondering if while she's looking for that, if the city can just, or the village can just go over exactly in terms of the employee hire and the history with, I guess it was 2006 versus 2017. That might be useful for the public to get background on that. Can anyone speak to that from the utility?
Well, I can speak to it, but I was not here at the time. My understanding, this is Tom Connolly again, my understanding is that in the 2006 extended rate case, an employee was built into that as far as the increase was concerned, that the village was to hire someone. My understanding is that they did not.
Okay, I see.
Yes, I can verify it's 660811, and both sub 2 and sub 3 talk about that a city, town, or village may derive funds from its water utility after all these costs and expenses and capital additions of the utility are met, and if there's surplus at the end of the year. I'm not sure how many years this goes back. I know there was a slight revision to this in 1994 or so, but it was definitely in place prior to that.
Okay. And also in terms of the water tower painting, that occurred in as part of the 2006 rate case, and that project was completed, I'm assuming. Is that right?
It most likely was without checking the exact years, but I can
Okay.
also comment on that.
Well, I can have the utility verify
Well,
if they know.
Yeah.
But-
Water towers do need to be painted periodically, depending on the location of the tower, the type, and the type of paint that's used. It's typically anywhere between every 10 years to every 20 years. And it is quite a costly endeavor to paint a water tower, so it's something that always needs to be reviewed and a certain level of cost built into the rate case so the utility can cover that when it needs to be done.
Mhm. But the cost that was proposed, was that out of the ordinary for utilities of this size, or did it seem to match proper amounts?
Let me see if I can find that page. Okay, so it is in my revenue requirement proposal on Schedule 4, page 2 of 2. And what was done in this case, based on the information that was supplied, is that costs were estimated at $50,000. I'm sorry, at $500,000 for water tower painting costs, and they were spread over 20 years. And then there was also some annual inspection costs of a little over $1,000. It might sound like quite a bit to spend $500,000 on painting water towers, but depending on where they're located and how large they are, it can cost up to $1 million to paint one water tower.
Okay. And do you know?
May I ask?
Oh, yes. Go
May I
ahead.
ask a question?
Yes, please.
May I ask a question in regard to the water tower issue?
Go ahead.
When you say 500,000, my question was that the news article indicated it wouldn't be considered until perhaps 5 years from now. Am I to understand the utility can set aside funds for water tower painting before it occurs?
Yes, that is one of the few things that we encourage utilities to set aside the money. So if we take $500,000 and say the utility needs to paint it every 20 years, 500,000 divided by 20 years would be $25,000 a year they would need to set aside. So we review it every time they file a rate case, and some utilities maybe need to set aside $10,000 a year. Some of the bigger communities in the state maybe need to set aside $300,000 a year. It just depends on how many water towers you have and how much it costs.
Thank you. One other question as far as there's a possibility of a well rehab item, and perhaps someone could tell me how much that might involve and whether that would fall under this rate increase.
Is that something mentioned here? Does it, no. Mr. Conley, do you have any information about a well rehab project?
We have 2 wells that we're working on right now that are a cause for concern. Well number 4, well number 6. I believe well number 6 has been pulled and inspected. We have an estimate to repair of approximately $20,000. And then well 6, I believe it's a similar estimate to dig into that well and find out what's happening with it.
Okay. And I was wondering if you could just give me the utility's justification for hiring a new employee, if there's just something that you can tell us what the need is for the public to understand that.
All right. My name is Tim Foss.
Okay. And you're a utility employee?
I am the Public Works Director.
Okay, great. So let me swear you in. Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. And spell your last name, please.
B as in boy, OSS.
Okay, go. Thanks.
The reason the push for another employee is in our from our municipality right now, there's 3 full-time people to cover streets, parks, water, sewer, building maintenance, what have you. And going through the reports every year, we don't have the manpower to be doing the inspections on valves, turning valves, inspecting hydrants, manholes, diggers hotline, so on and so on. So we're just looking for another person to help get some of these things completed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad we just wanted to get that explanation on the record. That's good. Thanks. Any other questions for on this issue?
I'm still. I hope I still
okay. How about one more question? What else do you have?
Right. I'm wondering how the rate of return is determined on these in the audit reports that I've looked at and kept a record of for over a number of years. Mm-hmm. And I can't help but notice how sometimes we've had a very good rate of return, particularly from 1982, when of course interest rates were much higher. We had 15%, 18%, 83, 30% in 84, 21, almost 26% in 85, and then in 1986, when the treatment plant went online, the rate increase still brought it down to 7.57, which is still good. 88 was 883, but after deregulation of the sewer utility, the rates of return kept going down, and that's because the sewer utility kept transferring the funds, continued to transfer the funds, even though they deregulated.
Okay. I think staff probably addressed that. They have a standard formula for rate of return. So go ahead.
Okay. I can't speak to any of the rate of returns from the 1980s. I don't have any of that information. And I can't really speak to what type of return the non-regulated sewer department might have earned, so I can really only speak to the regulated arena. When a utility files a rate case application, we review the construction and all the plant assets, we review the revenues, we review the expenses, we review any debt they have, and taking that into concern, we also, in our municipal rate cases, look at the bond market and how that is moving up and down over time, which you alluded to in your question, that economic conditions were much different back in the 80s. So using the municipal bond market as a guide, our starting point is a benchmark we use for all our municipal rate cases. And in the past 2 to 3 years, our benchmark has been very close to 5%. A little bit higher, a little bit lower. So that was what was used in this rate case. The rates we are proposing would allow the utility to earn 4.9% benchmark on its net investment rate base. Now, these are based on estimates, and if this is approved over the next couple of years, that would basically be the target or the goal for what the utility would be earning, but actual results will vary. One very good reason is weather could cause the sales to go a little higher or lower, and the amount of revenue collected would be different. And on the other hand, the expenses can vary quite a bit from year to year. We've talked about some well rehabs, there's main breaks, there's other things like that. So in any given year, the utility might have to spend $15,000 on maintenance and repairs, or it might need to spend $75,000 on maintenance and repairs. And our estimates are based on a more typical or routine year. So if expenses are lower than we forecast, the utility could have better earnings. If expenses are higher, the utility would have lower earnings than the target.
Thanks.
Well, if there is a need for replacement of water mains, how would that require another rate increase request?
Most likely. It depends how the project would be financed and how large the project is compared to the utility's existing assets. If they only do work on, say, a block or so, and the project goes well, they might be able to do something like that without a rate case, but if they're doing a little bit larger project and need to borrow money, it is fairly likely a utility needs to do a rate case to pay for those increased costs.
And the scheduled maintenance is in rates as well.
Correct.
So if there's scheduled water main replacements, they would be embedded in the new rates.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I know you mentioned the employee issue, and I wanted to clarify something I think may be of some comfort, because this is a step increase, and I believe Ms. Butzloff explained that the increase won't occur until the utility informs us that the next employee is hired. So there'll be a condition on the second step of the increase based on the actual hiring of the person. So I know there's an issue in 2006 that looks like the employee was never hired, but that won't happen in this situation. I mean, the rate won't go up until the hiring takes place. Am I getting that right? Yeah. Okay, I'm getting nods over on this end. So I thought maybe that'll reduce some of your concern there. I do have to say, I really do appreciate your informed and intelligent questions. Do you have any more? Can we move on to the next person?
I have one question in regard to what you just said, if you could answer that.
Okay, I'll try. I'll have to pass it off to someone else, I'm sure, because you seem to know a lot more than I do about this.
I'm just going to give you the example. If the employee was not hired, who has oversight to make sure these things are done under the rate increases that are permitted?
Well, I can kind of repeat what I was saying before. I don't know if you're gonna understand it, because I don't know how to say it much differently, but the way I understand the proposal is that the rates won't go up until the person is hired. So if this system is approved, if this proposal is approved, the order will state that the utility must inform us when the hiring takes place, and then the rates can increase. That second step increase will occur after the utility informs us that the hiring has taken place. So that's the check. So if the hiring doesn't take place, the rates won't go up. If the hiring does take place, they'll need to tell us, and then we can authorize that rate to increase to cover the cost of the new hire. Anything else you can add to that over here?
No, there's going to be a paragraph in the written order that describes what happens. So basically what Judge Newmark was saying is completely accurate in that the second phase of the increase won't go into effect until the utility lets the commission know in writing that there has been a new employee that has been hired. So they cannot just skip step one and go to step two. They must let us know. And there will be a condition in the written order about that.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, great. Well, like I said, I appreciate your comments and your intelligent questions. Anyone else want to make a comment?
I would probably have a couple more comments, maybe questions. I'll get a little closer to the mic.
Okay, so who's speaking right now?
It's Tom Connolly again with the Village.
Sorry, didn't recognize your voice there. Yeah, go ahead.
So you had mentioned during this hearing that as far as advice on the sewer side of things, you're not really at liberty to give advice or to make recommendations on how the village handles its sewer because it is deregulated. With regards to the water, are you able to give advice or make recommendations with regards to the water utility?
Well, I think we typically do that. I can let staff, I guess if you want to ask a question and we'll see exactly what
I would say yes, and it depends what your question is. You know, is it an accounting question, a legal question, a policy question? But generally, yes.
Okay. So then my question would be, should the village, and would it be typical for a village or city or town to make an expectation of a refund as part of their general fund budget?
I would say that it is not typical. I've worked here more than 27 years, so I've dealt with almost every utility in the state multiple times over that, and I can only think of a handful of utilities where their city, village, or town has basically required a transfer back to it. And by a handful, I truly mean a handful. Less than 10 most likely. So it is quite rare across the state of Wisconsin to see such a transfer.
And so when we began this process back in July, we were dealing with someone by the name of Ann Weymouth, and I understand that you may be her replacement?
No, Ann retired. So
Ann retired.
yeah, I'm not her. I mean, I did take over on this rate case, but I'm not, quote, her replacement.
And I guess my concern is that in conversations with Village Hall regarding the budget, regarding the transfer that's been made over the last 20 years, that there seems to be maybe a change not only at the PSC but in the lens that you're using to view the situation. And, as finance chair, I'm charged with creating a budget that prevents this from ever happening again, but also puts the village in a better position moving forward and protects against something like this happening again. I just want to make sure that this isn't you don't have a philosophical difference with what Ann had come up with and what we had discussed since July. You're really still making the recommendation to write off the $1.6 million that we had our board vote on. That's still the recommendation from the PSC today, is it not?
It is. And some of the original conference calls we had when we drafted our data request that several parties were on the line, I was in the same room with Ann and participated in those phone calls. So I would have to say, we're generally following the same viewpoint. More recently, when a few questions were brought up and I was just trying to get more familiar with it, I did try and take a closer year-by-year look at it instead of just looking at the grand total. But we really are coming from the same viewpoint. And I'm just pulling up on our website the annual report from 10 years ago or so. I just pulled up the 2007 one because there was a mention too about when the last time the rate case was. And if you look back quite a few years, there was a payable listed from the water and sewer utility to the municipal general fund, but it was not as large of a payable. It was in the ballpark of 200 to 300,000. And we do see that from time to time with smaller communities where the water sewer utility has trouble paying some of their bills or has a small construction project. So it probably didn't raise any flags. And the other thing, if you look back in those annual reports from about 10 years ago, the reason listed for some of that amount that was recorded mentioned wages and other reimbursements that were owed to the village. And that certainly is very legitimate, things we see that sometimes a very small utility who had a lot of repairs can't quite pay all its wages and needs to borrow some money from the village. So it really wasn't until we were working on this rate case and in more recent years saw that payable increasing by larger amounts year by year and growing to the 1.5 million that it really caught our attention and caused us to ask some extra questions.
All right, because during the course of this hearing, it was mentioned that maybe all of that 1.6 would not have to be written off. And just so you understand why I'm asking this and kind of sticking on this point, that really represents on paper the entire cash position of the village of Walworth. So by writing that off the books, you are impairing our ability to borrow. You may be putting us in a position where we're breaking the covenants of our current bond issue. These are things that obviously I have to take very seriously. So if there is a chance of recapturing some of this or holding on to some of that money, it certainly would put the village in a better position.
Okay, I can address that from two different avenues. One from more policy and what we believe is good business practice, and then the other, what limited comments I would have from the legal perspective. So from the policy perspective that we have in regulating utilities is this was money, net income that was earned by the utility and allowed by the commission, the rates that were set. And once the utility earns this money, it is the utility's money. From our perspective, from a financial perspective, we like to see it kept in the utility and reinvested. Anybody who's seen news probably at least saw some mention over the years about the infrastructure in the United States, particularly things that are not obvious, like water and sewer mains under the ground, and the need to replace those in the future. So with that as a backdrop, we feel it is important for the utility to reinvest in itself and maintain the funds that are earned. And even though we only regulate the water utility, if we were asked what our professional opinion would be, what we would recommend for non-regulated systems, it would be along the same lines. It's good business practice to reinvest in yourself and maintain the funds you need for projects. So that would be, from an auditor's point of view, from the commission point of view, what our recommendations would be. Now, from the other avenue, the legal point of view, we gave you the statute number, and there are certain transfers that are allowed by statute if there are certain surplus funds at the end of the year. Now, it is a municipal statute, so even if I was a PSC attorney, it's not something that I would offer opinions on. So you need to follow that statute, especially for your regulated water utility. Generally, they like to see the same things happen with non-regulated utility departments, but again, since it is a municipal statute, that may be something that you need to consult your municipal attorney with. I do know with what Baker Tilly filed on the sewer side, and some of the differences in how the non-regulated department does certain accounting functions, it was rather difficult to determine how much of a surplus the sewer may have had in certain years, and it may take quite a bit of work to dig through all those numbers and determine if any of that $1.5 million could be attributed to a surplus, because the sewer utility had been paying amounts over the years. The total, I believe, over the past 15 years or so was about $2.8 million that was requested in transfers. Some of that was paid as available, leaving a balance of $1.5 million. So there's certainly were large transfers over the years.
Great. Anything else, Mr. Connolly?
No, I think that answers my questions on how I need to move forward with budgeting for our public utility.
Okay, good.
So thank you.
Glad we could help. All right. So any other members of the public that wish to speak?
Dolores Popal again.
Okay.
Even though the sewer utility was deregulated in 1998, and is it not true that it's no longer considered a public utility?
Well, for purposes of regulation, it's not considered a public utility. It doesn't come under the commission's jurisdiction, and I guess the way the statutes are written, that's what public utilities technically are. They're companies, entities that provide these services that are within the commission's jurisdiction. To the extent, if you want to use more of a generalized term, it is a service owned by the village, and certainly falls under the village's ownership and legal scrutiny by the village. The village runs the sewer utilities, as I'm guessing it does. Actually, can't say that for sure, but it's run by a public entity, but it's not a regulated one from our standpoint.
Okay, so then the rate structure involving a deregulated utility it's basically in the hands of elected officials.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes, the village will runs the utility, the sewer utility, and sets the rates for it. And the commission does not do any rate cases like this when it comes to the deregulated sewer services.
But the public can still complain to the Public Service Commission if they're dissatisfied with whatever's occurred.
Absolutely. We have complaint jurisdiction, so if you had a complaint about your bill or about a service or practice on the sewer side, we could consider taking a case on your complaint. And there's a separate section of municipal law that deals with that process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other members of the public? Somebody new? Anybody?
Do you want your rates increased? No, I don't.
I think we've covered everyone.
Got everybody? All right. We've wrung all the comments out of everyone. All right, great. Well, this has been a very informative, exciting hearing. I'm glad we could provide this forum for the public to see how this gets done, and hopefully we all come out a little wiser. So at this point, I'm going to adjourn the hearing. I'll turn off the recording. Staff may have some details to discuss with the utility off the line at this point, but just for administrative ease. But the hearing's done, so let me make sure we're adjourned from that part of it. Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Last week I sent over the appearance slips via email. If you could just fill those out for the public and for the utility /